This is not a sequel to this morning's lesson. It only has the word problem in it. Otherwise, it doesn't have anything to do with this morning's lesson. In Luke chapter 8 and in verse 14, our Lord is explaining the parable of the sower and its meaning. And what at first might sound like an odd phrase, he says, the seed which fell among the thorns, these are the ones who have heard, and as they go on their way, they are choked with worries and riches and pleasures of this life, and bring no fruit to maturity. That word choked, just remember what he's using, the description that he's using. He has first told them about a parable about a sower sowing seed. And the seed, of course, turns into a plant that grows up. So the word choked is a reference to weeds. In another parable, he actually brings out the tares, which are weeds that grow up with the wheat. So what he's saying is, there are things in the world that are like weeds that choke our progress as Christians and cause us not to bear fruit. And he gives the three things here that we're going to be talking about tonight. Wordsworth, the English poet from a couple of hundred years ago, had a very modern poem, actually, if you think about it. He said, the world is too much with us. Late and soon, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. Basically, you're working and working, and what do you have to show for it? But I thought that was a very modern-sounding poem with what we're dealing with today. People are so caught up in the world. He, of course, was talking about our problems with the world. Jesus was too, and that's what I'm talking about tonight as we go into our lesson. So let's start out with the first of the weeds that choke us and keep us from growing and bearing fruit as we should. The underlying Greek word here for worries, and worries is the right word that describes it, but the definition of that word is a feeling of apprehension or distress in view of possible danger or misfortune. And the key there is the word possible. Because we tend to worry a lot about things that might happen that usually don't happen in our lives. But we're worried about the fact that they could happen. As near as I've been able to figure out, worry has absolutely no positive effect on the outcome of things in our lives. If there's something you can do about what you have anxiety about, do it. If not, leave it in the hands of God. Now, in Luke chapter 21 and verse 34, Jesus is talking to his apostles about two things, and one of them applies to us, one of them applied to them particularly. He's talking about first the destruction of Jerusalem. They had seen the temple, and he says it's all going to be torn down. He explains how that's going to happen. Basically, in AD 70, the Roman army was going to come in because the Jews had rebelled and completely wipe out the infrastructure of the Jewish nation, destroying the temple in the process. In verse 34, he tells them, be on guard. First, I should just glance at verse 33. He told them about that, and then he said in verse 33, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. So he's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem on the one hand, but he's also talking about the end of time on the other. A couple of things that they could worry about. But listen to what he said, be on guard, so that your hearts will not be weighted down with dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of life. And that they will not come upon you suddenly like a trap. For it will come upon all those who dwell on the face of all the earth. So what is he saying here? I mean, drunkenness and dissipation is probably not something most of us are going to have a problem with. But how about worries? You can answer for yourself then. How about worries? What is it going to do? It's going to weigh us down. And in the parable, it was going to choke us. Here, it's going to weigh us down, and it's going to keep us from being alert and being prepared for the end. You can get in such a situation with worry in your life that it almost freezes you from doing things that you could actually be doing to help your situation. And I think that's the reason Jesus uses that word choke. Now, there is something you can worry about and it be all right in God's sight. We're going to look at that real quick. Because you may sometimes have this word. In 2 Corinthians chapter 11, Paul is having to defend his apostleship to the Corinthians. Apparently there's some false teachers have come among them and said, we're apostles and we're just as good as Paul. And Paul is saying, as he does sometimes, instead of saying, look, I'm much greater than they are because of all the great things they've done. No, he says, here's what I've done. I've suffered, I've been beaten, I've been mistreated because I am an apostle of Christ. These people that hasn't affected them. But on top of it, all the external suffering, he says in verse 28, there is the daily pressure on me of concern for all the churches. Paul was concerned about those congregations that he had gotten started. They were dear to his heart, and he was concerned about what might happen to them. Now, I bring this up because the word concerned here is the same Greek word for worry in Luke. So we're using the same word here. You can be concerned about certain things. You can worry about certain things. Elders can and should be concerned about the congregation and worry about the spiritual welfare of the congregation. Every member can be. And certainly we can all be concerned about different ones of our members who are suffering from various illnesses. It's a good thing to be concerned about the welfare of the church. And Paul was concerned about the welfare of these Christians. But all the things in the world that we worry about, what's going to happen tomorrow? Am I going to be able to make it? Am I going to have enough money to retire? Is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? What if I get sick? What is going to happen to me? These are things the people in the world all worry about. They're very natural to worry about. The Christians aren't to be natural people. They're to be spiritual people. And so in 1 Peter chapter 5, Peter is giving this advice to Christians. He's prefacing the fact that they're going to be facing troubles and temptations from Satan. He says, verse 6, go back to verse 6. Therefore humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he might exalt you at the proper time, casting all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Again, the word anxiety in the New American Standard, you may have a different word there, is the same Greek word that Jesus was talking about worry. Here's the problem we have. The Lord didn't say, look, you can have this level of worry, but don't let it get out of hand. What he said was, cast all of your anxiety on him. All of your worries. Let God handle them. If I could put it poetically, I would say this: do your best and let God handle the rest. And I think that's a good little rhyme to remember sometime. There are so many things we don't have control over in our lives that we worry about. You just handle what you have control over. And of course, if you have control over it, don't worry about it. Do it. Do what you can. And understand that we can only do so much. The Lord died for us because we can't save ourselves. We can be forgiven and we can